Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Money with me, your host, Al Moore, financial advisor and owner of Al Moore Financial. We have a very special episode today. I've been telling you guys we're going to bring in some guests to have more of a community conversation feel and just get some more experts in the building. So I'm very, very happy today to have two of the best in the area in the real estate and lending field. I'm joined by Ms. Mallory Hill and Mr. Kobe Parker. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some conversation about my audience for you guys who are interested in getting investing in real estate and just some things to look out for, whether you're a novice investor in real estate, a new investor, or somebody with a little experience looking to learn a little more. You know, we're going to make sure we get you guys some information that you can use. So firstly, ladies first, Miss Mallory Hill, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, Northeast Arkansas, Jonesboro. My name is Mallory Hill. I am a mortgage loan originator at Regions Bank here in Jonesboro. However, I work and service the majority of the South. I'm licensed in 21 states across the South of the United States. So anywhere you want to purchase or need assistance with financing your first, your second, or getting into investment, as we will talk about today, I am your girl. I'm looking forward to meeting and working with those of you who may have questions or those of you who are ready to get into the business. And let's go to work.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mallory. Thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. I appreciate it. Next, Mr. Kobe Parker.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Mallory, what's up, girl?
Hey.
Al, are you my guy? For those of y'all that don't know me, my name's Kobe Parker. I'm originally from West Memphis. Moved here to Jonesboro in 2003 to go to college, and I tell everybody I've been stuck here ever since. I tried to leave a couple of times, but I just keep ending up back here. I'm a real estate agent. I work for Keller Williams Realty out of Little Rock, but I am here in the Jonesboro area. I service Northeast Arkansas, and I'm also an investor. I got into real estate about a little over 3 years ago. Got in January of 2020. I didn't have my license at the time. I had taken the test, but I was more interested in investing. And when COVID happened, I started doing more investments, and I went back to focusing on getting my license, got my license, and been in real estate ever since. I am full-time in real estate, and so this is all I do. Married, have a wife, and we got 6 kids all together, and super pumped because we just came back from Disney and had a great vacation, and so I'm just ready to talk more about real estate and get back into the things that I love. So I appreciate y'all for having me.
Oh, man, appreciate you coming on, and definitely got to ramp up because you got to make back all that money you just spent at Disney.
I do.
So, something to you. So firstly, Kobe, I want to jump in with you and get your take working with both people who have utilized you in terms of getting their personal, their main property, and also working with people who were looking for investment homes or second homes, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. From the realtor's perspective, kind of what are the different roles for a realtor in terms of working with someone looking for an investment property versus what that process is like when you're working with somebody who's looking for their primary home?
Okay. So I think the role is essentially the same. As an agent, a lot of people come to me and they say, hey, I want to buy a house. And so my first question is always going to be, have you been pre-approved? And if they say no, then I want to get them connected with the lender. And then the lender tells them how much they're going to get, how much they can afford based on where they want to be as far as payments, their credit, things like that. I don't do any of that. And so when people that haven't been pre-approved come to me, I'm going to refer them to a lender. Now, once they've been pre-approved and we have an idea of what funding is going to look like, that helps us to determine if you're going to get something that's more like FHA, VA, rural development, those type of loans. Most of the time, that's going to be your primary residence. And so there are certain guidelines that they have, and I'm sure Mallory can elaborate on it more, that the house has to be in certain conditions. There are certain requirements, things like that. So if you're looking for an investment property, most of the time you're not going to use the more traditional way of funding as far as FHA, VA, things like that. That's most of the time. There are some situations where you will, but most of the time you don't. If you're an investor, you're going to be looking at more of like an in-house bank loan, a home equity line of credit, hard money loan, cash, things like that. So that's a big difference going into the situation is how we're going to finance the purchase of the asset that we're going to buy. So once we figure that out, then we'll decide a couple of different things. If it's your primary residence, obviously you're going to be living in there. You want to make sure that the property is in livable condition and it has to appraise. And, there's other things that the lender is going to require that you can't just make a decision on. It's going to be the lender's requirements. As an investor, sometimes the lenders are flexible on what the property looks like right now if you can explain to them what it's going to look like in the future and how you're going to add value to it and how you're going to make it more appealing to either an end buyer or a tenant that's going to live in it and pay you rent, things like that. So the process, my role is the same, but the duties are different, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
okay. I got you. That makes sense.
And so depending on what their goal is, we'll come up with a plan. We always have a strategy session where we say, okay, so what's the purpose? What's the reason you're wanting to buy this property? Is it for you to live in? Is it an investment property? Is it a vacation home? Is it an Airbnb? Whatever you're thinking that it's going to be, we want to know that on the front end because that helps to determine how we move forward in the process.
Gotcha. Okay. Appreciate that. So in terms of that, when somebody has kind of answered those questions that Kobe spoke on in terms of where the property will be at and things of that nature, Mallory, to you, for somebody who would be a first-time real estate investor who's getting ready for some that financing, what are some things that they should be looking at or checking up on, or what is kind of that process in terms of a first-time investor getting that finance started? What does that look like for them?
Great question. First things first, like Kobe mentioned, you need to also know when you're investing, is this going to be a home that you're going to live in first and eventually make this a investment property, or is this going to be solely an investment property in which you are going to go out and find tenants? And that's going to determine the route in which your lender takes for funding. And it's also going to determine how much cash is going to be needed at the closing table, how much you're going to be out of pocket in order to make this deal work. So in conjunction with the realtor, the lender is looking at how this deal is structured. If it's your primary home, we can go back to some of those traditional lending options and help the borrower to get government-based funding like the FHA, making sure that the home is great and keep some of that out-of-pocket costs down. And so as an investor, you're wanting to make sure, like I said, which one is it? Is it going to be your primary home first, then investment, or is it going to be the investment down the line? So we're paying attention to my credit report, making sure that there are no issues on there, any open disputes. We're paying attention to how much cash I actually have in the bank. Do I have any money available for potential rehab needs, or do I have any money available for potential down payments? And if not, this is where the realtor and the lender can come together to structure a deal that makes it work for that investor. So those are the main things. Do I have cash? And also, just where I am credit-wise as to which type of loan the lender is going to be able to give to the borrower.
Okay, so just kind of follow up with that. There is no kind of one-size-fits-all in terms of like a down payment deal for somebody. If somebody's like, well, I heard for an investment property that you have to have 25% down no matter what. Then somebody said, no, I heard it was 20. So it all is just kind of dependent upon those other situations in terms of credit report and
absolutely
things of that nature. So
it's your credit, but it's your credit, it's also going to be your credit profile, and it's also going to be your cash that you have on hand, or how the deal is structured, with any opposite finance that you may be able to get from the seller in other places, and gifting from family. And it's also going to depend on what the house is actually looking at. So those are the three main components that lenders and are looking at in order to make sure that this deal works for the investor. But those things are going to be the key parts of the deal.
Okay, gotcha. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit to more broad topic, just in terms of the market itself. So, just being on the investment side of it, the last 2 years have seen vast amounts of change, just in the equities and securities market. And most of my clients, all of my clients have some holdings in real estate, whether it be private real estate holdings of their own, or I'm big on real estate investment trusts for people who may not necessarily have the liquidity or just the tenacity to get into like an actual property, but they're like, hey, I'm thinking this commercial real estate is going somewhere. I want to have some kind of investment in real estate. So I mean, I'm always for having some amount of your portfolio, be it 10 or 15% in real estate, just because of the long-term intrinsic value of it. But with that said, there's been a lot of changes. Last year in the market, we kind of had a down year. We're up about 6-7% this year in the S&P, so things are going better. Just depending on how the Fed does with rates, we'll just kind of, in a jobs report, we might pick up a little bit more of a bull in this third quarter coming up. But that's relying upon a couple things. Just in terms of what may have changed in the time that we've had like those big hikes in rates, or sometimes Congress will come down and say, we're changing this, whether it be the Frank Dodd Act or anything like that. Kobe, can you kind of point us to like any recent or significant changes over the last year that may have occurred in the real estate market that may not be that a lot of people may not know about?
I mean, I guess the biggest thing is, especially for investors, if you didn't have an ideal or a strategy that you were utilizing to get into investing in real estate in the past, you probably could have just got by, because the market jumped up so fast to where, properties were worth more. You had more value, and the interest rates were low. So everybody was buying, people were selling, and you were cashing out, you were making all of this money. Versus now, some of those people that bought houses at really high prices are in a situation where they need to sell now, and the property isn't worth what they bought it for because of inflation and different things like that. And so there's people that are still doing deals in this market, but you just have to be a little bit more strategic about how you get into investing. The traditional way of just putting down 20 or 25%, buying a house, buying an investment property, and hoping that it'll cash flow and it'll appreciate over time. Like everything just appreciated. So it's not going to turn around and reappreciate, in a year or so like that. It's not going to change just overnight like that. So the changes that happened, after during the pandemic or whatever, that had been on the horizon for a while. And so now that we've experienced that, I think it's going to be a while before we get back to that point, but history repeats itself. So I think we'll get back there. But right now, what I'm seeing investors do are be more creative. They're still doing deals, but they're being more creative with the deals. They're using terms, especially people that are just starting out trying to get into real estate. They're utilizing the house hacking method. They're doing owner financing deals. They're doing lease options, things like that. Where in the previous market that we were in, you didn't have to do those things, because the deals were just there. Versus now, you have to. It's more of a situation where you create deals because there are deals that are still happening, but you just have to be strategic about getting those deals done.
Gotcha. Okay. So, in other words, kind of that when everybody's kind of racing to get these deals at the end of 2020 and 2021, the market has definitely changed from then.
Yes.
With people paying, because I remember I had clients who were literally moving and buying houses 10% over asking price 2 years
Mhm.
ago. And I can remember saying to them then, just, you know, whatever you want to do, you know, we'll look at what you want to do. But do you, just as your advisor, I'm trying to think of the sustainability of
Right.
paying 20% extra for something without being able kind of to justify the long-term value of it. But
Right.
a lot of people at that time were saying, "Oh man, this is going to last forever."
Right.
And me being kind of a general skeptic, just because I know the market ebbs and flows, I was like, I don't know if I can justify that. But though that time is definitely changed. That time is definitely done, is what you're saying.
Yeah. No, for
Right.
sure. I think that time is done. And I had clients that I was working with that did that same thing. And my answer was always the same. If the bank says that this is what it's worth, then this is what, I think you should pay for it.
Okay.
But you can do whatever you want to. But the bank is saying, the bank who has the money, who's approving the loan, says that, hey, based on our research, it's worth this much. This is what we should pay. And ultimately, as your realtor, I'm going to tell you that this, in my opinion, if this is what the bank is saying, this is where our safety lies. And if you want to go outside of that, then feel free to, but just know that there's consequences, that could come from that.
A dangerous
some of
game.
them,
Right.
and some of them made the decision regardless. And I mean, I think they'll still be fine, but it's a little bit tighter than what they are comfortable with, but it's not like a situation where they took a loss or they're hurting or anything like that. So
just in a little bit of Googling I do just in terms of real estate investing, things like this. Mallory, I've seen this thing come across called the BRRRR method. Can you kind of give us a brief overview of what the BRRRR method is and how people use that?
Absolutely. The BRRRR method stands for to buy, rehab, to rent, to refinance, and then you repeat. The first step is that with your realtor, you're doing your due diligence and you are researching a property that you want to purchase, and you want to purchase underneath the current market value.
mhm.
The reason for that is you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in a position whereas later that you can add value through the repair stage or the rehab stage, so that when it's time to come back to the bank in the refinance stage, you're refinancing based upon an inflated or an increased value that you've added through that repair stage. And then from there, that gives you the cash necessary for you to go out and to purchase one more time. And I left out an important step is you got to have a tenant in there. By all means, you got to have a tenant in that home that you're purchasing with the BRRRR method, to give you the income to support the financials, so that when you go back to the bank to refinance, it says, okay, this property really is bringing in this income and this value fits. And we as the bank say that this is a safe investment for us to give you the money that you need in order to repeat this process. And so borrowers will go out and buy a house under value. So say you spend, take a house that is $72,000. You go out and purchase that. Then you go out and you make XYZ rehab. Let's say you add approximately, because we're going to use real numbers here. Do you have a whiteboard? Or is it? And you pause if you need to.
She fancy, man.
You can pause if you need to. But let's say we did a $70,000 house, and then we have gone out and added $30,000 worth of improvements to the home. You've renovated the bathroom, you made some necessary upgrades to the kitchen, all the important money things, right? After that, the house then appraises for approximately $200,000 at that point. So you're like, okay, well, maybe I can go in and refinance this loan, and then I've got my property rented, but I can refinance this property and get some of that added value that I put back in out of that house. And then after that, so I pay off my initial loan of $72,000. No, let's go back. We've got the $200,000 in value now. And the bank says that I'm going to loan it to you at, let's say, 0.75. So that gives you $150,000 on your new loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
150 minus the initial 70 that we paid off, right? The initial loan was 70. So that leaves you with $80,000 in equity, right? That you have available. But when you take in your amount that you're paying for closing costs, which would be roughly 10 or so, that leaves you then with 70,000 in equity that you can move on to another property and just kind of take forward with some of the things that you're getting ready to do. But that's how the BRRRR method works in essence. You buy your house at undervalue, you make some improvements, you put your tenant in there, have the income to support this property and the payments that you're making on your mortgage. You refinance with the bank, you pay off all of your old debts, take the excess cash that you were given, put it on a brand new property, and you start the process over and over again. It's a lengthy process, but it is one method that borrowers are using just to get into the investment game in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense, because even when you cash out, pay that old loan off, you got
Correct.
a tenant in there, so effectively that tenant should be paying whatever note left you have on it, plus you're getting some profit in that. But
Absolutely.
you've also got the 70,000 in profit to go put down and start the process of getting on another property. So I mean,
Absolutely.
you're talking about a substantial windfall for yourself if you could get that process started and do it successfully 2 or 3 times. You've set yourself up with a substantial income that's coming in that's just kind of passive for you. So even though it does take some work and instruction in a certain kind of way,
Absolutely.
I definitely think it's worth it. So real quick, Kobe, earlier you mentioned something about, in your answer, you mentioned house hacking. Can you go into that a little bit and let us know what house hacking is?
Yeah. So essentially, house hacking is a term that I heard some other investors in other areas saying, and it just kind of stuck with me. And so that's so when I'm working with primarily first-time home buyers, I ask them in our strategy session, like, kind of, what's your goal? Is your goal to just find your dream home now? Is your goal to just get a property that you can live in now and then rent it out later? Like, what type of life you want to live? Things like that. So it's a real in-depth conversation. And for all of the people that I talk to that are either single or they're just like, a couple, they don't have any kids, or maybe even if they do have a young kid or whatever, I always try to encourage them to utilize the house hacking method. And what that is essentially, we'll just say we use a duplex, because with FHA, you can get approved for a single family up to 4 units. And so what that means is you can get a home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, or you can get a 4-unit apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those qualify with FHA because it's under 4 units or whatever.
Right.
And so what I tell people is, if you say, and I'm just going to try to use some simple numbers or whatever, we'll just say you get a duplex or a 4-unit apartment complex that's 4 units, and you can get it for $200,000. All right. And then your payments are, we'll just say $1,200. $1,200 a month, $200,000. I think that's about accurate or whatever. Yeah. And so it's 4 units. If you can rent out each one of those units for $1,000, your monthly payment is only $1,200. So you got 3 other people paying you $1,000 per unit. So that's $3,000 that you're making, and you're living in the 4th unit for free. And so it's a way for you to get into real estate investing, and you have a place to stay, but then you're also providing a need for somebody else, that is going to pay you rent, a tenant is going to pay you rent. But then whenever you do that for, I think, a year and a half, I don't know the time frame, but it's either a year or 2 years, something like that, you can decide to move out. Right. And you put somebody else in that property, and now you have 4 people paying you $1,000 a month, but your monthly payment hasn't changed. It's still $1,200. So now you've created $3,800 cash flow that comes to you, and that's minus your vacancies, repairs, things like that or whatever. But it's a way for you to create passive cash flow, but you also have a place to stay. But if you move out, of course, you got to go find another place to stay or whatever. But the goal with house hacking is to live in your property and have somebody else pay the mortgage for you
Right.
through the rents that you collect. And so if you can get into a deal like that starting out, that's the cheat code for people that want to get into real estate investing, that are willing to, sacrifice for a year or two and, maybe live a little bit, uncomfortable or whatever the case is, because you're thinking long term. And
Right.
I mean, most people aren't willing to do that, but for the people that do, they say that, hey, this was worth it, because now I've acquired an asset. I've lived essentially for rent free for a year or so. I've acquired an asset. Now I've created some cash flow for myself. And so, I think it's for people that want to get into real estate investing and, maybe don't have a whole lot of money, but they're willing to sacrifice, and, they can get approved for the traditional FHA lending, then, it's a way for you to get into it, fairly easy, either get a duplex or up to 4 units. Because the thing with FHA, you only got to put down 3.5%. You go back to the traditional way we talked about acquiring properties as an investor. We're talking about 15 on the low end, 20% on the high end, as opposed to 3.5%.
Right.
3.5% seems more appealing, and it's more financially feasible for somebody that's just starting out. And so that's why I always try to encourage people to utilize the house hacking method. If your long-term goal is to get into investing, give it a try. And if it's area you live in a house and you decide, hey, I don't want you duplex, whatever. Hey, I don't want to do it. You move out, you sell it, do whatever. You still have lived somewhere essentially rent free.
And I just wanted to jump in that house hacking can also be done with single family homes as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit different. You can do it as short-term rentals or rent out individual rooms. And then also in that particular situation, depending upon your area, as long as it's owner occupied and that it's still owned by you primarily, and if that's a location where you have your utilities turned on and your driver's license, you meet all of that criteria, you still could be qualified for 100% financing and still hack your house towards your investment idea. So there are ways to do it and to minimize your out-of-pocket cash. FHA is one of them, but also banks such as Regions. We do have in-house loans that allow you to be able to do it also with 100% financing, as well as other different cities and towns offer grants towards anything that is owner-occupied. So those are other methods to remember.
Well, that's definitely something new for me, and I like the sound of that. Being able to utilize your time and your money, because I'm always about the long-term picture. So I believe in small sacrifices short-term for a year or so to get yourself viable as a real estate investor. I definitely think that's worth it if it fits you and your lifestyle. So, man, that's a ton of information, ton of good, solid information. And just like I always say, every month, I look up and we're knocking on 30 minutes. So I want to thank you guys again for your time, for coming to join me for this More Money with Al for the month of June. And June is what month is June for? Is it investing, real estate? Awareness Month. Mallory, help me out. What is
it's the homeownership awareness month.
Homeownership
National Homeownership Awareness Month. It's a month where we kind of just take time to encourage and educate others about home ownership.
Perfect. So
I didn't know that, but that's good.
Yeah, it's something every month. So
because I was going to say investing month. Every month is investing.
Every month should be investing month. Absolutely. So I'll make sure that I get you all's contact information so we can share this with my audience at Almore Financial and with the good people at KLEK. And again, we want to thank our KLEK family for having us again. And we'll make sure that we can get you in touch with Mr. Parker and Ms. Hill for any of you guys real estate or financing related questions or concerns. And just once again, I just want to thank you guys again every month for coming to join me here on More Money with Al. And until next month, we hope you guys have a good one, have a safe one, and we'll see you soon.
All right, see ya.
See you later.